The Diamond Sutra is a teaching of Sakyamuni Buddha, and it is part of the Buddhist tradition mostly popular with the Vajrayana and Theravada, a bit less in the Mahayana. This document is 32 paragraphs that, for some interesting but strange reason, seem to fit also with the Kabbalistic 32 ways of wisdom. But we will not cover that topic today. We'll start by learning how to interpret this sutra, which will inspire us in the interpretation of any sutra. In any case, when we dialogue of a certain point of the sutra, we want to feel it, not just to think it. We want to embody it, to inhabit the presence of the teaching. So, in this case, in the reading of the Vajrachedika, the diamond that cuts through illusion, sutra. Someone cleaning up, I guess. In this case, apparently very complex wisdom that once we combine with the science of integration that we have learned many times, allows us to go very quickly feel the state of being that each paragraph wants us to be in. Okay? So that we can see clearly in the world where perception is illusion. Okay? Let us take the first few words of that sutra. This is what I heard. Usually people would just go, okay, this is what I heard, there was Buddha, there's some place, okay. And that day when they went to eat, okay, whatever, second paragraph, this is what people do usually. Without considering the most important wisdom of the sutra. This is what I've heard one time. This is what I heard. What does it mean? It means that there were witnesses. It also means that in any kind of wisdom, they don't take for granted that it just happened out of nowhere. This is Sakyamuni's way of saying you should not give so much credit to the sutras of the Hindu that were written out of nowhere by Shiva himself. What? Humans write. Okay? And these sutras were written by Shiva in the same way that the humans wrote at this time, where other sutras are more honest, saying this is what Shiva revealed to the Vedas, the first people who started to write the spiritual teachings. And then some even more objective sutras of the Hindu wisdom. This is what this guy wrote at this time, saying that, meaning that this is a teaching of a master. It didn't just pop out of nowhere. Yes, God inspired all the wisdom of all the Hindu sutras, which are all very wonderful to study. Except when it leads to this false assumption that Shiva writes. Shiva writes when a human writes in the state of Shiva, for example. Okay? And some sutras well explain that phenomena, while other sutras just say it's out of nowhere. And then we believe that there really was an angry Shiva that cut one of the 5 heads of Brahma. That's why now Brahma has 4. Wow. Such hatred in the greatest being of compassion. Huh? So the objectivity of a sutra is by saying, even if this could have been written by any random people, there is at least someone who said, I was a witness to that. It was just another guy saying cool stuff. Okay? Which is very important for spirituality. Heads in heaven, feet on the ground, until you reach a point of vacuity when it doesn't matter, but you're still doing that. Non-distinction is so fun. This is what I've heard. Do you understand the importance of those few words of wisdom? Good. One time, okay, so it happened. On a point in time, of course, the idea of time that does not exist, but while this happened, it was the present when it did. Therefore, it was one of those moments of now. When the Buddha was staying in the monastery of Anathapindika, I can never say this word, Anathapindika, because I don't live there. It's a park in Jeddah Grove near Sravasti with a community of 1,250 bhikkhus, fully ordained monks. This is a location. So there's a witness, there's a moment in time, and a place in space. And many people were present. What does that mean? It means that regardless of the idea of a multiverse, of a non-distinct, everything is illusion, and all the misunderstanding of people about the Buddhist wisdom, where we think that everything is illusion, while the Buddha himself never even said that. He said everything you perceive is an illusion, but there is a reality. There is one reality. And there is a self, but it's not the self. So you have to stop conceiving about it. There's tons of cryptic wisdom until understood. Makes no sense. But the Buddha never said that there is no soul. For example, when he was asked if there's a soul, he said that if he said there was, you would have a misconception. And if he said that there is no soul, you would have another misconception, so that you wouldn't talk about it. Until came the time that he did. Okay? So he never said that there is no soul. But some people take the first phrase of a wisdom, if we conceive that there is a soul, we're wrong. Therefore, there's no soul. No, you have to look at the second phrase of that same teaching. If you conceive there is no soul, you're also wrong. You'll have a misconception. Do you understand? So it's very cryptic. If you don't have what it takes to understand, there is a state of being which is not anything you can conceive. But remove yourself of any conception and whatever remain is there. That's the kind of wisdom we're going to study in the Diamond Sutra. So the first thing he does is confirm that through this sea of metaphorical analogies and parables and similes and every expedient mean used to get you to free your mind, the Buddha himself, along with his witness, they endorse that there's a place, that there is a time, and that there's people there. Hence, that is no illusion. Okay? He endorses this is what happens now. So he confirms it's there. Now about the word exist, does he confirm it exists? Depends on your definition of exist. But at one point, if you use the simple explanation, the definition of exist, this took place. Okay? It exists. So the idea that they would actually put in the teaching itself that something really happened, therefore whoever believes there is no phenomena, they have confirmed that there was one. Then there will be the explanation of that phenomena was not what we perceived it to be. Because whatever we perceive of that phenomena is also an illusion. But the phenomena itself happened. They gathered and they talked. That was real. If you just flee in the world of dreams, where you think, wow, all of this is just in my mind. And it's so fun that other people have the same thing in their mind at the same time. For us to imagine that is real, but all of this is illusion. You know, some people have this kind of thinking. Okay? Lots of Buddhists. This is a complete misunderstanding of what the Buddha said. He said, everything is mind. He didn't say everything is in your head. He said everything is mind. So what is just out there is out there right now, and it is still mind, but it's not mind in your head, it's mind there. So it really is. And we share that collective mind. That is one mind, and while that mind is felt like physicality, then it's physical too. Physicality is mind. But while it's experienced as physicality, it is physicality. Therefore, it's not an illusion, except what we perceive of it, but then we'll get to this. Okay? So the Buddha endorsed that things happen. That's what it means. Okay? It's very important to grasp the depth of what Sakyamuni endorsed, personally endorsed, when he allowed this to be written as the first teaching of a very important sutra in the Buddhist canon. Okay. Then, second paragraph of the first chapter. That day, when it was time to make the round of alms. Okay, so there was a time to make a round of alms. That means that they had a conditioning. And that the conditioning is acceptable because they had a set time to do alms. Therefore, they did have a system of rules and behaving. Right? So that idea of having no system, no rules of behaving, will every master understand the power of rules and behaviors and will use it in the most efficient way. They won't deny it. They will simply free themselves from the power that rules have on them, and then they will use these rules to gain more power of compassion. When it was time to make the rounds of alms, so he ate, he went to beg, he had to work for his food. So he worked, his job was beggar. Okay, that was a profession. Right? In some way. He was not without a job. His job was to help people who cared for him. So he made a round of alms. The Buddha put on his Sangati robe, holding his bowl, went into the city of Sravasti to seek alms food, going from house to house. So he explains how he did it, so that there's no mystery. The Buddha ate food. And whatever was thrown in that bowl, he would go back. When the bowl is full for a meal, he would go back. And then later we learned that he would eat meat anytime it is offered, and it was very often offered because that's the honors that was given to the princes and the great people, and he was a prince, and he was given rich, spicy food and fun stuff to eat. Although you might want not to believe it, it's okay. So he had a robe, alright? We'll get back to this. When the alms round was completed, he returned to the monastery to eat the midday meal. So there's a monastery. So there's a place where they eat. Then he put away his Sangati robe and his bowl, washed his feet, arranged his cushion, and sat down. The first teaching of that sutra explains to you the priorities in any spiritual path. Eat, clothing, shelter, healthy behaviors, clean up. That the first thing you do on a spiritual path is ensure the basic needs of food, shelter, clothing, and keep your health safe. The washing of the feet is not a ritual honor. It's because they walk in shit when they go in the village. And they have to clean up. The idea of cleaning up the feet of the master is a misconception today which has no sense. Because we have socks and shoes. Cleaning up the feet of the master was to make sure he remains healthy so that he doesn't drag shit all around in the monastery. And infectious swamps or whatever where they went with naked feet. Do you understand that? So we must understand the basic reason, the most simple and basic reason for something to happen. He washed his feet because it has some kind of spiritual meaning. Of course it can have a spiritual meaning. We can give it the meaning we want, but the reason they did it is just not to get sick. Simple as that. Okay. Salubrity of the place. So, in any kind of spirituality, we have tons of rules and laws, and we forget the basics of all things. So, in the cutting away of illusion, the sutra that says that you have to remove from your mind the illusion, the diamond so hard it can cut through the veil of your perception. Vajrachedika pranya parimat. What's going on? I'm sick, by the way. Doesn't look like it, but I have trouble with that. Pranya Paramita Sutra. I'm sorry for messing up the title. I've said it 100 times. It was 10 years ago. The first teaching of obtaining a pure heart or mind by cutting away the illusion with a diamond is to be so down to earth, objective, saying that something happened in a place and in a time with witnesses and people there, that they ate, had robe, had clothing, had shelter, took care of their health, clean up. This idea of everything is an illusion, you really have to get this out of your mind to be a real Buddhist. There is an illusion in all things, but whatever you conceive to be that illusion is an illusion too, so you should forget about it, so that the only illusion remaining will be the one right in front of you. Then we can talk about what is illusion. As long as you have a conception of what illusion we're talked about, then you have no idea how to understand any teaching on illusion that the Buddha gave. There is a reality. As it's explained in the Maha Sutra, there is a reality. And the Buddha would scold this priest not understanding that fundamental reality and the existence of a true self. Existence, true self. The truth, the self, the existence, all of that in once. Yes, there is. But whatever you would conceive of it would be a dream in your mind, so stop thinking about it. But if because of that you negate that there is one reality, then you're also false. Remove yourself of any conception. Whatever remains is just that. Then you get the Tathagata state of being. Okay. So, for every little thing that you do in life, in spirituality, in every belief that you have that denies the simplest natural order of things, you're going to hinder yourself. We eat, we have food and shelter, and they did this way. While you're in the world of samsara, stuff happens. And samsara means stuff happens. Sam is everything or complete, and sara is happening. Okay, samsara, everything's going on there. Yes.
What was the practical application of putting on the robe only to go beg and then taking it off?
They had 2 layers of clothing. One was exposed to the world, which you could remove, so you wouldn't drag all the pollution and the garbage in the monastery. In the monastery, you have the simple robes, you can just sit, and it was hot also when you were in the monastery. So they just had the basic, the diaper and the first veil around them. And when they went out, you never know how long it's going to take and what could happen, so you just have the entire robe around you to protect your entire body. There was a question of decency also, in the sense that the inner lining was not covering much. And to respect the people where they went, people who conceived that you should hide your body not to cause unnecessary desire to people who would watch you around half naked, well, that would be serving as that purpose too. If it was not required for, they don't have judgments. These bhikkhus didn't have judgments of having a body just as it was. But people in the village did. So this robe is a symbol equally of expedient means and compassion to to respect those who have a culture and a system of belief where desires could be triggered before they have vanquished them. Therefore, you would not go and teach them unnecessarily. Yeah. Right. So that's good. That's the first chapter. I love this first chapter because it brings you right to the ground. Okay. Second chapter is like a slap in the face for lots of people. Yes?
Can you repeat the illusion part that you were talking about? What is illusion, what is not illusion?
No. But you can rewatch the video and you can listen to the rest of the sutra's interpretation. It's going to be fun. Alright? 2. At that time, the Venerable Subhuti stood up, bared his right shoulder, put his knee on the ground, so he was in reverence, and folding his palms respectfully, said to the Buddha. Okay, so just there, this is the attitude of reverence to a master. It was cultural, you know, the way I tell you to treat me is never to have any feeling of adoration, of admiration. Gratitude is the only one that you should nourish intentionally, because you're happy that I give you the wisdom. But otherwise, there's no principle of authority in a master. However, naturally, your feeling of admiration of the work I do will happen. As long as you study, it will be natural. Okay. So at this point, there's a feeling of wanting to be reverent, but you don't have to. The idea is to remove from your mind that someone must bow to someone else, like if there was authority. But when it takes you from inside, and your gratitude becomes more than gratitude, and you're so happy, then you would, from your own free will, decide to be reverent to a master, which then really, because it's an emotional state that motivates you, really amplifies the feeling of the master's effect on you. But if it's a rule, it doesn't work. So you should not bow to a master until you have a feeling of joy that compels you to. If you have a feeling of guilt or submission, hold back, don't bow. And integrate your emotion, free your mind from this folly, which would cause you to become obedient. Obedient? What? If you're in devotion and bhakti, you're doing it out of your free will. You're not obeying commands. That doesn't work, okay? So that reverence was well understood at that time. So it explains that Subhuti was close to the Buddha for a reason, because he naturally had the reverence. It was not forced. Okay? Word honored one. It is rare to find someone like you. Okay, he acknowledges the rarity of the resource, hence endorsing the reason for which he has some form of honest admiration for his master. You always support and show special confidence in the Bodhisattvas. Now, he's referring to Bodhisattvas. It's not just about the Buddha anymore. And he says that the Buddha supports and shows special confidence in the Bodhisattvas, those who have perfected their mind, one of which is currently bowing to the Buddha, asking the question, on the edge of asking the question. Did you notice that we try to interpret every phrase? As we go, we'll just interpret chapters or paragraph at once. But you see the attitude? What does that mean? If they endorse that phrase, it means something. Okay, it means an attitude, a way of being. It will teach you how to think the way they did. So breathe. It's not just in the head, it's in the feelings. Okay? So, yes, Sakyamuni showed support and special confidence. Support. Okay, therefore, he did support their work. He probably did therapy with them when they needed help. He probably gave them more wisdom. What does that mean? If he gave special confidence and he still gave support to people who are bodhisattvas, now that explains what is a bodhisattva. In a bit, it gives them a more human trait. Because if a bodhisattva would be an ascended master, glorified, an avatar, a new Vishnu, if the bodhisattvas were only the great beings, how could they benefit of any kind of support from just a human master such as Sakyamuni? How could they get special confidence? So it tells you that a bodhisattva is still a human being. And although he has perfected his mind, still has needs and is not yet accomplished and would like more support and special confidences along his way. Does that make it more human, more accessible? It's like a dream that they walk with halos of light around them. Well, for the clairvoyants, obviously they do have halos of light around them. But otherwise, for pretty much anyone else, it's just other dudes and dudesses around them. So that phrase is fun just to understand how more human is a spiritual experience. And the Bodhisattvas with perfected mind are still questing for something. So, world-honored one, if sons and daughters of good families want to give rise to the highest, most fulfilled awakened mind, what should they rely on and what should they do to master their thinking? So, he's talking about bodhisattvas and still talking that they still want to get to that point. And in a way, he says for whoever did not get to the point of bodhisattvas, that they can do something to achieve it and want to know what. But the secret, the most important secret of that chapter is not there yet. Okay? It's suggested, but we're getting there. The Buddha replied, "Well said, Subhuti." It's a question, and he says, "Well said." You asked your question correctly. What you have said is absolutely correct. The Tathagata always support and show special confidence in bodhisattvas. Well said about the affirmation that Subhuti just did about the rarity of a resource such as Sakyamuni, and that bodhisattvas with perfected mind still do have that kind of support and confidence. Please listen with all your attention and the Tathagata will respond to your question. So please respond with all, please pay attention, okay? That's what he says, pay attention. Be focused, be conscious. So don't stop wandering around, scratching and, clearing your teeth of the food, of the alms that remains, whatever they would be doing. Pay attention now. I'm going to answer that. If daughters and sons of good families want to give rise to the highest, most fulfilled awakened mind, they should rely on the following way. And the Venerable Subhuti said, "Lord, we are so happy to hear your teachings." In the sense that it will follow. Now the teachings will follow. But this endorses something absolutely extraordinary. The fact that it was granted for them that both men and women could achieve enlightenment and perfection of the mind. Because they had no hesitation of saying that both sons and daughters of good families could do it. So, this idea that women cannot enlighten was added to the sutras, like an insult that was added, the last line of the most important teaching of the Buddha, the Maha Sutra, when it went to Japan and China and was translated, and then from one of those back into English, the last line of the last book of the last teaching of Sakyamuni is, "And then they gathered to pray for women to incarnate as men so they could achieve enlightenment." Like if it would be the last and most important phrase from the entire Buddhist canon. It's added. It's obviously mischievously added by politicians and people in various countries, that when these translations got to them, they couldn't accept that a woman would have rights. The same way that until not so long ago here, women did not vote, did not have the signs of intelligence, according to men who were just afraid to lose it. Okay, do you understand? So when you have a phrase like this at the end of a beautiful teaching that is just conflictual, treacherous, it's added. Like in the Christian canon, there's a beautiful place, I think it's in John somewhere, where they say, listen well, and you're going to get some great teaching, and those who don't get it are going to be punished. But that's the last line. I mean, everything else is about a beautiful teaching of compassion, and then those who don't get it are going to get punished. What? What is that? This is bullshit. This is added to the books to make sure that people grow in fear and judgment. Okay? So whenever in the content, in the middle of some book, you have something that would go against another object of teaching at the end of a book or chapter, it deletes it. It means it was just, let's just finish with that, so it's the last thing you remember of that entire teaching. You're going to be punished. Or that woman cannot enlighten. Okay? Because in the middle of his life, of his teaching life, somewhere in the middle at one point, after just a few years of experience, he said, of course, boys and girls can do it. And that feels right, That makes sense. And they just throw it like that. So that is a very, very important aspect of this sutra. It completely denies every other part of every teaching afterwards that says that women can't. Once the women have conquered their hormonal system, which is just a bit harder to conquer from the men, the women have a harder time getting rid of the intense, dramatic feelings that rise out of their genetic. But once this is conquered, they can do it as much as men could. Men have to let go of control. Women have to let go of manipulation. All right. A cultural aspect here. Like if you had to be born in some good family to evolve, we have to understand what does it mean. Daughters and sons of good families. Daughters and sons of good families. Meaning that if you're not born in the good lineage, you can't. Today that makes no sense. But go back 2.6 thousand years ago. If you were born in a family of warriors, it's a question of caste, the Hindu caste. If you're born in a family of warriors, you're going to be taught war. And they're going to condition you so much that you'll never access any kind of spiritual wisdom to the point where you can perfect your mind, because they need you as warrior not to have perfected mind, but killer minds. Okay? Of course, some of these warriors perfected their minds also. But it was extremely hard, and they were rejects. They were rejected from their families. If you're born in the farmer caste or in the worker caste, your mind will be filled with what you have to do for society to function. So it's going to be very hard to just have access to the wisdom. If you're born in the good family, they refer to karma. If your karma was to be born in a family that allows spirituality, as opposed to those families who actually deny it and refuse it. There were lots of families in that time that completely refused spirituality, that considered it to be a complete waste of time. You think today we have atheists? In that time, spirituality was rising, therefore was not popular, therefore not everyone did it. You just think that every Hindu in the past did it. No. Before there were masters, there were not masters. And the rarity of the resource caused most people to just keep on surviving and live as they would in a more shamanic spirituality, very close to the earth. Okay? So to be born in the good family means for your karma to have brought you in the good environment, the good scenario. And the family was not just your household, the family was your entire clan. Okay? I'm in the family of those. We count 700 members. Okay? So it's not like if you're born with a good dad and mom. It's really the family for them is the big environment of everyone involved around you which allows or not spirituality as their system of thoughts. Okay? And then if your environment is appropriate for you to develop your mind in such a fashion, then girl or boy, you had the same equal chance. There was no difference for them. Is this good? Is this fun? Breathe. It's fun, and when you see that there's a possibility of non-judgment. And the Venerable Subhuti confirms the reason for which he bowed. Lord, we are so happy to hear your teaching. He just goes in reverence again. He confirms there's a reason why he bowed. He feels that joy. He shares it. And the Buddha is happy to share it. Sakyamuni said at one point, it's easy to teach once you know. It's hard to find students who can learn. 3. The Buddha said to Subhuti, this is how the Bodhisattva, Mahasattvas master their thinking. So here he says the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. When we speak of Bodhisattvas, just before, we mention that the Bodhisattvas still need to work on themselves in order to achieve the most awakened and perfected mind. And then he says, the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas master their thinking. So now he's talking about those who did achieve the ultimate goal of Buddha state. And these are called the Mahasattvas, the great beings, what the Kabbalists would call the Ishim, for example. Okay? So there is a difference between a Bodhisattva and a Mahasattva. A Mahasattva is one who has perfected his being. And a Bodhisattva is one who has a perfection that is still in the process of a refinement at every level. Just saying that Bodhisattvas are mentioned as people who still have work to do, and Mahasattvas are mentioned as people who have accomplished themselves. Okay? This is how the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas master their thinking. That was optical character recognition because it says Rnasta instead of master. We'll have this corrected. However many species of living beings there are. Okay. Now the Buddha refers that there are living species and that they are different. Okay. So we believe that there are conceptions and ways to name them and understand them. Although later in this same paragraph he says he doesn't really care about it. He endorses that they are in fact distinctions of types of living beings, just to stay objective. However many species of living beings there are, whether born from egg, from womb, from moisture, or spontaneously, whether they have form or do not have form, whether they have perception or do not have perception, or whether it cannot be said of them that they have perception or that they don't have it, we must lead all these beings to the ultimate nirvana so that they can lead liberated. And when this innumerable, immeasurable, infinite number of beings has become liberated, we do not in truth think that a single being has been liberated. Now, that's one of the noodle boilers. Okay? Complex. He's talking about the different types of living beings. And it's fun to see why he would give so much precision. To finish with, we have to free them and we'll never think we will, or we have. This means you liberate every being in the most efficient way, with no savior definition, with no definition of responsibility of I must liberate them, because then you have the savior mask of the ego. So he says, we will achieve it, we will reach an objective, yes we will, they will be liberated, and then we will not even think that we have liberated a single one of them. In the sense that we will not think that we have any credit in that liberation. It's not we who liberated them. Okay, so now we go one step further in that interpretation. There is no Savior, and there is no we who liberated them. So it's not us who liberates them. Everyone is liberated by themselves. But if we have this idea that they are each going to liberate themselves, then we start not giving a shit about anyone else and we do nothing about it. That is why he says we have to work in order for them to be liberated, but we have not liberated them ourselves. So, we must lead those beings to liberation. But we are not the ones liberating them. And we're not doing it from a point of view of Savior, but we are playing a role in the process of the global liberation of all things. Okay. So that's just the attitude of how you work to help people around and what is your part. You do what you have to do, but you don't stay stuck with the value it would give you or the credit you want to have. Look how great I am for helping you out. So as a master, you need to be free. So he says, in other words, that someone who has mastered his mind will never give himself credit for anything he has done. And that comes from another teaching, which is the liberation of value. You're not worthless, you're not worthful. There is no worth to have. Therefore you can never miss it or have too much. There's no worth. But there is a feeling of valorization, of feeling great when you do something good. So you feel great. And this is your own self-worth. But it is not worth anything, because the moment it's compared to the outside, their value makes no more sense. Okay? That's a lot just to say there. Let's talk about the different types of beings. Okay? Born from egg, womb, moisture, or spontaneously. So the Buddha here acknowledges that life springs out of nowhere sometimes. Bacterial life. That does not need a generator before. Okay? Wherever the conditions are met for life to happen, it does. In a very small scale level. And some will get to be born from eggs, womb, or moisture. Like if moisture could give life, well, yes, apparently it does. Whether they have form or do not have form. So he's speaking of beings that have form that we can perceive, and that there is life that we can't perceive, or that we could perceive but there are no form. Well, having no form means having also no edges, no body. Is it about the gooey stuff that lies on the floor? About swamp matter? Or spirits? We don't know yet. But it is whatever does not have a form fixed. So the slushy stuff that is born from moisture, I guess. Whether they have perception or do not have perception, well, a plant doesn't seem to have perception, although it does. So it falls in the category that we don't know if they have or not. It's just so fun to see how he perceives life, how broad he would. And that means that the teaching is not applied only to humans. Basically for us, that's what it means. You say, okay, I'm going to save the world, every living creature, and you go and you teach only to humans. Did you care about the plants? About the animals? About the fauna? There's another teaching that says, if an angry lion comes to a village, you have to kill it to save the village. Because this is to save life. In the most efficient way, that lion would not stop until he has eaten one of the children, so you kill it. And of course, every warrior of a village would do that. And that allows the lion now to be born as a human, or to progress onto his next incarnation. Anyway, it's not a very popular teaching, and we won't invoke it in the Buddhist canon. It's fun to see how he perceives life nonetheless, and that his teaching is not limited to human beings, and that there is no value or credit given to one who has done the work of liberation, but nonetheless we are the ones responsible of leading them. So to the answer of the perfection of mind, you perfect your mind by liberating others. Charity and service. It's just the first part of the answer. There's much more. Why is this so? Why is it so that the perfect attitude of helping the next person to achieve liberation instead of just you? Why is it so? If, Subhuti, a bodhisattva holds onto the idea of a self, a person, a living being, a lifespan exists, that person is not an authentic bodhisattva. So a bodhisattva does not hold the idea of a self, a person, a living being, a lifespan. He didn't say a bodhisattva has no lifespan. He said a bodhisattva doesn't have ideas of what a lifespan is. Do you understand? It's about the conceptions. He didn't say the bodhisattva is not a person. He says the bodhisattva does not hold an idea of being a person. He doesn't conceive what he is as a person. It doesn't mean he's not someone. It means he's free from the conception he would dream of having. So here Sakyamuni refers to identity. When you experience in meditation a deep transcendental state of consciousness, and you're here in this apparent reality, but the feeling of true existence in vacuity at the same time, emptiness of all phenomena, seems even more real than everything that seems real here until you awaken to a higher level. When you get these great transcendental experiences, your perception is completely shifted from illusion to unconceived reality. I'll take, for example, the idea of a lifespan. If you don't remember any of your past lives with foggy clarity, if you don't even have a foggy clarity of some event that happened at other times, then you believe that this is your only chance, and you dramatize it by your limited perception of thinking you have only a few years in your life. If you ask a child, a 2-year-old boy or girl, to sit still for 15 minutes and not move, you're good for about 30 seconds. Okay? It just can't hold on. Now, you've done fixity this week, and at one point, after 45 minutes of fixity, your mind hurt, was in pain. But you lasted more than 15 seconds or 1 minute before you were at rest, okay, by the stillness. If you ask a 70-year-old to sit still and not move for 15 minutes, after 15 minutes, he's just going to ask if he can sit still there for another 2 hours. He's okay with that. Because 15 minutes in 2 years of life is a different proportion than 15 minutes in 70 years of life. The ratio is not the same. And the way you experience 15 minutes when you have a lot of time accumulated in your life is very different when you experience 15 minutes and every day is a new day of discovery and you can't waste a single moment. That reference of the experience of a few minutes is dramatic and important when you don't have a lot of minutes yet in your life account, you know, in your story, in your sensitivity of what you've experienced so far. So if you would remember your lifetimes, if you would remember yourself as an undefined being with no limit of time, and you would know your existence was part of you for the last hundreds of thousands of years, or 35,000 of years, or even just a few thousand years if your soul is very young, usually not human that quickly. If you had the eternity before you, your entire lifespan right now would be insignificant. And you would not be so dramatic about death. Because you would have a rich transcendental experience while still here incarnate, that all this is not that dramatic. So Bodhisattva, having perfected his mind or on the way of the full perfection to become a Mahasattva, is freed from the idea of a lifespan, from the point of view that it's a limit, like if the lifespan would be the end of something. It's just another experience instead. And even that experience holds no credit if there's no consciousness to be aware of it. So the idea of an entire lifespan is the amount of drama you put in the cycle of life and death, and how much you are insecure of every little danger that could happen to you. Breathe. Feel it, live it. It's not just in the head, it's felt. There is inside you a vipassana to operate, an exhaustive observation on a long period of time of that fundamental fear of life and death that you still hold, to free yourself of this lifespan. Now what Sakyamuni is explaining here is the basics of his introduction, is the introduction of possibilities, but then you have to apply every other tool he taught to be freed. How do you get to the point of the freedom of the lifespan? You can't just think it, because you'll think in your head, but your body will be stuck with it. You'll still have power inside you that believes. Like when you get angry, you don't choose to be angry. You don't make a choice, it just boom, it pops. Therefore there's something inside you that made the decision, and it's not your head. Therefore your head cannot make those existential decisions, like stopping to believe in a lifespan. If you want to stop believing in a lifespan just because you convince yourself that there is no lifespan, because you've read sutras that said you should not conceive them, you're still going to conceive them, but not in your head. Because there's a power inside you that makes those choices for you. And this is what you want to discover. And vipassana, an exhaustive observation, what you have to do. A long-term observation of what will react to that consciousness. Stand still for an hour and fix a point. But it's not just fixing the point with your head. Your eyes are on the point, but your consciousness is on the attention inside what goes on. And you're inhabiting yourself in your vipassana. It's not just the fixing. Because like the people of Kriya Yoga would say, that fixing is useless. And that's why they discard vipassana, saying it's a bad technique. Because they don't understand that vipassana is an extraordinary technique when you apply it correctly. Is to be fully absorbed in an experience. Not giving credit to the experience, but living it or experimenting it nonetheless. You breathe, you inhabit, you feel, and with your mind observe. And all of this is rich, and after an hour or two you are burning inside with power, because these forces are burning up. And you are being freed through long-term observation of this power inside, which is the human animal, that makes decision without consulting you. Because you can stop believing in the idea of a lifespan. If someone hits you in the face, you will believe in that suffering and you will pretend that you don't. Because it's not a decision in your head. It's something that you really live. There's a big difference between manasa and chitta. And the practice of bodhicitta is not the process of practicing your intellect. Manasa is the intellect, and chitta is the psyche, the mind that includes behaviors, feelings, conditioning, and all this stuff buried inside, the subconscious, and whatever lies there. Okay, your traumas, your conditionings, your emotions, everything. Chitta is not the mind in the brain. Okay, that's manasa. Cognitive abilities, mnemonic, deduction, comprehension, the ability to pay attention. But mind, in its broad sense, is chitta, and bodhicitta is the perfection of the mind technique. And to perfect your bodhicitta, it's not body manasa. So it's not just the building up of conditioning of how you have to live and perceive and think. You read the sutras until your head is so filled that you're convinced you hold the truth. You have to go and apply the technique. And you will go through an experience, and you will experience it. It will feel real, and you will exist, and you have a feeling of reality and all that. And then it will be destroyed and empty. But while it will be real, it will. Until you're freed from it and go to the other one. Okay? So the bodhicitta is the ensemble of all the wisdom that Sakyamuni gave to go down inside and perfect your being. So you can become a bodhisattva. And even when you are a bodhisattva, it means that you're perfectly able to apply those teachings of perfection in yourself. But you have not yet perfected yourself. That's a mahasattva. Okay? It's rich, eh? There's a lot, just with one line, a few words, to understand very deeply that there is work to do. And it starts with eating, clothing, shelter, taking care of your health, somewhere in time. Okay? Just there. It's a simple way. Let's take a break.